Good afternoon, everyone. I am just reading your reader responses on the Langston Hughes poems, and I wanted to offer a few suggestions when it comes to writing about poetry that are different than when it comes to writing about fiction. I also wanted to show you an example of a well-done student response from one of my sections this spring, and to offer you some information about when your grades will be coming for your first essay that you wrote. So a few things about poetry that make it different than fiction are that you are going to put the title of poems in quotation marks. So works of fiction, if they are longer, like Frankenstein, the title is italicized. Works of fiction like poetry and short poetry, which is most of what you're reading, will be in quotation marks for the title. So no italics, just quotation marks, capitalize all the major words. Additionally, the in-text citations that you use when you write about poetry are different too. In fiction, you only include the author's last name and the page number on which you found the information. In poetry, you include the author's last name, but you include a line number. So poems all have lines, and if you are using the Norton Anthology as your text, you will see, I think it's every fifth line has a little number to the right side of it. So they are counting every fifth line for you, which makes it easier when you are dealing with longer pieces like The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock to find the lines that you want to write about or talk about. So make sure that you use line numbers instead of page numbers in your in-text citations for them. And then the last thing is that when you are quoting lines from a poem, that you use the backslash, so the thing that looks like this on your computer keyboard. I'm trying to, if on my keyboard it is the same key as the question mark. You use that to indicate a line break. So the poet chooses where to break the line of each poem because poems are arranged in stanzas and lines, and longer poems are arranged in more complicated scenarios. But when you are dealing with the page or the line break, when the author or poet decides to start a new line, you want to remain true to that. So you use the backslash, not backsplash, to do that. A couple other things would include to be careful of confusing the poet with the narrator. And this is true for drama and it's true for fiction as well. We often want to put the feelings of the person talking in a poem to the poet, him or herself. But we can't make that assumption. People write poems and other works to express differing points of view. And so just because Langston Hughes wrote a poem doesn't mean that it is Langston Hughes speaking, which can be kind of confusing, especially when we read the works by Sylvia Plath, who writes poetry from a very narrative point of view. So she is writing about her own life, and she is saying that she is writing about her own life. So I would just caution you to not use Hughes feels. Instead, use phrases like you did with fiction. The narrator implies, things like that. I wanted to quickly show you what I mean by a well-done essay, and I'm going to try to switch my recording to picture within a picture. Or there I am. Here I am, hi. Picture within a picture, and I'm going to move you over to show you Jeremy. So Jeremy has been one of my sections this spring. And I asked if I could share his piece with the class, and I wanted to show you. So a couple of you are still struggling a little bit with MLA formatting. So you have your name as the student, my name as your instructor, the full title of our course together, and the date. The date can be either the date you write or the date that the piece is due. Have a title which is descriptive of what you're writing about. Reader response is kind of blah and not very descriptive, especially since you're having a couple of distinct reader responses. Try to give it a more descriptive title. All the major words are capitalized. You have your last name and page number up in the header. And then everything is double-spaced, and the beginning of paragraphs is indented by 1 tab space or 1/2 inch. So you see here that Jeremy has quotation marks around the title of pieces. He has in-text citations after he has quoted or paraphrased from the poems themselves, line numbers, and then the period goes outside of that parenthetical. I'm also asking you for the reader responses to respond. You are the reader, and it is your response. So rather than summarize it for me, because I know what the piece is about, you know what the piece is about, I'm asking you to analyze it a little bit, respond to how it hit you, anything that you noticed that was startling or upsetting or particularly well done, and then write about that. This is not an assignment that I am asking you to go outside and do homework or research on or find out what other people think. This is your particular response. And sometimes I will ask you a pointed question about it, and sometimes I will just ask that you respond to your reading of it and how it affected you. What do you think it means? And given maybe what I've asked you to read prior to reading the poems, or in this case, looking at the Harlem Renaissance, does it add to what you knew about that or didn't know about it, and the takeaway that we as readers are supposed to glean from the reading. So I wanted to share those things with you. I will post this on announcements, and I am working my way through a couple different classes worth of essays, and I have 2 sections of English composition. They submitted their papers before you did, so I will be grading theirs first and then yours next, and I try to get my feedback to you within a week, week and a half, so it probably won't be either until later this week or very early next week, so I just wanted to let you know that. Any questions, as always, please do let me know. Thanks.